In the reality today, if people want to move down here, what would be the advice that you would give people? Because we know that a lot of the properties are challenges, but it doesn't mean that they can't buy them. They're just going to have to work through the challenges. And a lot of this stuff that what we want to do is we want to help them, guide them today until we get to that point of where we have a better, maybe more professional people that are working in the market. What would the advice be today so that way they can come down here, they can navigate those challenges, and they can end up with a property? Because if we waited for perfection, then the whole market would stop, because that's not going to happen today. We've got to be able to deal with the situations.
Yes, and thank you for saying that. Actually, I closed on a property, and it's owned by was owned by a client of mine in La Pastora, which is north of Todos Santos. And eventually it took us from September of last year until this week with Bancomer, and I'm saying the name. It's not a bad bank. It's just a bank that is very complicated. It's very regulated, and it's got internals that actually translate to the buying process. And sometimes those internal policies are a cause for a transaction to fall through. So even though it's one of the probably dozens of things that could actually go wrong or could have an impact in a transaction, in the meantime, I actually transacted property that took me 5 weeks to close on and transfer to the client with a different bank, Banbajio. Yes, I'm naming it because I'm not bad body. I'm just stating the facts. It's easier to navigate and all that. But what should someone do before they want to buy? Let's assume that they decided to rent in Mexico and start feeling those sounds, feeling their way in. And I always remind this, and I believe I even mentioned it when you invited me to your office to do that presentation. I told you about that Bugs Bunny cartoon that he's getting into a hot tub and he's going, a toe at a time, right? You go like, ooh, 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 you're feeling the waters, my friend, right? So I don't want people to be like the salesperson putting someone into a Cadillac, like, oh, you feel cushy, oh, turn the ignition, oh, look at the stereo. No, you have to be careful. You have to go slow. You have to be, but you have to know the system, at least to have some introduction. And I like that you always say, if you're to move here and you want to buy, I suggest that you rent first. You ask the questions, and I always say, pause down, don't hurry up, get as much information, but get it from credible sources, okay? If you ask a buyer, the buyer will tell you what he saw, what he noticed, what he understood from his end. If you ask a developer, you get a lot of information, unbiased information. But in this case, they have to know what are the formalities, what are the costs. A lot of people come here and figure that they're going to make a killing in the industry. Unfortunately, it's not. And I'm saying this, I could be all by a country mile, but you're not making any money in the industry today, not at this point. If you're looking at Cabo, probably that's different. If we're talking about Nópolis out of Loreto, that's different. Yeah, they're now making money, even though they went through a whole bunch of features. But every case is different. So the rules to buy, and if you're a savvy buyer and you know what you're doing, you probably get a much lower asking price if you're able to know what you're doing. But at this point, you need to know what their formalities are. What is your budget? What do you have to look for? Even the contract part, there's a lot of issues, and people don't even wink at how important a contract is. You have to talk about realistic closing times. You have to talk about a closing cost. You have to talk about payment methods. Give you an idea. My client from Los Cabos who sold the other day was asking why didn't the capital gains were not paid out of escrow. Well, I didn't get involved in the escrow part because they already had discussed it. But yes, I agree. Escrow should have been told to have this much, whatever capital gains out of the purchase price, be forwarded and routed to that account number of the notario to pay the capital gains. So I get involved in all those phases, but sometimes the agent is supposed to do that. They're specially trained. Again, getting to know formalities, getting to know the times and the costs are important. Realistic closing costs are not the same if you're buying a brand new unit, an empty lot, or if you're getting an assignment of fideicomiso, in which you have to understand, is there, how many years left do you have in your fideicomiso? Oh, it's a 50-year fideicomiso. Oh, you're on the 15th year, so there's 35 years left. But if you're buying and you're asking me, and I noticed that it's HSBC, it's Scotia, those banks are no longer taking any new business, I suggest you're coming in, it's going to cost you regardless. So why not simply switch over to a bank that is up and coming, because there's a lot of traffic and banks that are no longer taking business, and that is an important part to address. But if it's not, eventually you sold it, you dump them into a notario's office, and the guy is like, almighty, when is this ever going to stop, and how much is it going to cost me? And then what happens? Deals fall through because they set an unrealistic closing time of 60 days on a non-refundable deposit, which is absolutely abusive. How can you say that it's not reimbursable? It should always be escrow. It should always be in escrow, because escrow is your protection. And it's a blatant lie to say that there's no escrow in Mexico. Lie, lie, lie. There is escrow here. And it's a protection that people should consider.
So, Rafael, so right now, so I don't want to scare everybody to think that they can't come down here and buy real estate, but I hear the message that you're saying is just be careful and cautious on the people that you're choosing to represent you. To make sure you're having the right people that understand how to do this properly, so that way you can have a good experience, because property is being bought and sold here every day to the foreign market, and it can be done, and it can be done in the correct way. Did I say that right?
Yeah. And thank you for saying that, because see, one thing is to buy, and you said it before, and another thing is to actually become the owner, the legal owner of that. So in between what happens from buying to owning, there's a space of time that is sometimes indefinite, because someone has to be responsible for continuing and being able to spell to the buyer what are the many intricacies, formalities, times, and costs that have to be there. That's the due diligence part, right? So it's easy to buy. What people need to understand is they need the guiding process to be spelled clearly beforehand in order to make a decision. So oftentimes people come to me with an agreement already in place, where they already put down money, and the cash kind of deposit instead of escrow. Okay, that's workable, no problem, we can do that. But you need to have the advice to be able to understand that you definitely want to have this come to fruition, to be close, to be yours, with the right bank at the right cost, within the right time frame.